I want to share with you a secret this morning. But in order to tell you that secret, I have to tell you a definition of what a secret is. It's a definition that was provided to me by a United Methodist bishop. Here's the definition of a Methodist secret. It's something we tell to one person at a time. So what I need you to do as an individual is to stand as you are able, right where you are, right now, first of all. And then I need you to turn to one person, just one person. And I need you to get ready to tell a secret. Have you found your one person? Are you ready to tell the Methodist secret that you only tell to one person at a time? Now remember, it's a secret, so you have to whisper it. Here's the secret. Who knows? Perhaps you have come for just such a time as this. The secret's out. Now say it out loud together with me. Who knows? Perhaps you have come for just such a time as this. Okay, the secret's out. Some years ago, I was a member of a board of ordained ministry of a United Methodist annual conference. We were sitting in a typical board of ordained ministry meeting, interviewing candidates who wanted to be ordained elder at that time. There was a young man before us. He'd been on the path toward ministry, finished his seminary degree after completing college. He was on his way toward being ordained elder. He was being interviewed, and one of the members of the board asked him the question, when were you aware of your call to ministry? The room became very quiet. First, he bowed his head and looked at his shoes, and then his voice became very soft, and he said, I was raised on a dairy farm in the northeastern part of New York. One morning, very early, while it was yet dark, I went to the barn to do my chores, milking the cows. I bent down near the first cow. It was so cold that as I began the milking process, I leaned my body very close to the animal so that I could receive some of her body heat. And there, in the quiet of the barn in that dark morning, through the warmth of the cow, I sensed the presence of God calling me to the ministry. Now that's a true story. I'm going to tell you another one that I was not present to hear, but I heard it told by Dr. Fred Craddock, longtime professor of preaching. He told the story about the time he had gone to visit an old, long-retired preacher. And he asked that retired preacher about his call to ministry. And here's what the old man said. I was raised on a cotton farm. One very hot day, when I was out in the field working in the cotton, I heard the midday dinner bell ring, and I walked to the house where Mother greeted me and said, wash up quickly, the preacher's coming for dinner. And I remembered what a fine meal it was. Fried chicken, biscuits, potatoes, beans, pie. And then when dinner was over, Daddy said, let's go back into the field, son. And I got up from the table and headed back into the field in the hot, blazing afternoon sun. And I looked back toward the house and saw the preacher settling into a chair under the shade of a tree as my mother was pouring him a glass of iced tea, and I heard the voice of God calling. Now, I must say it is impressive every time I hear those two stories or think about them again, what a wonderful thing it is for somebody to be so clear about the moment that God called them. We could quibble, of course, over the legitimacy of those senses of call, but the real question is not whether we think they were called to preach. The real question this morning is whether we can discern God's calling in our lives, in our circumstances, when there's no warm cow on a cold morning and no cold glass of iced tea on a hot afternoon. We could turn to the Bible for help. And certainly the example of Paul on the road to Damascus would be a great first place to start. There he was, heading in one direction with his life, bent on destroying the church and sending the Christians to hell, when he saw a light and heard a voice that completely turned him around and transformed his life. As the 9th chapter of the book of Acts says, the voice even told him, "I am Jesus." There's not much need for discernment on our part when the message is that clear. But such moments of clarity are rare indeed, even in the Bible. Most of the calls to ministry in the Scriptures are cases where discerning the authenticity of the call is not easy at all. Moses met the Lord on a mountain. The physical appearance was a bush on fire, not being consumed by the flames. And yet Moses needed multiple explanations. Every time the voice out of the burning bush said something to him, he asked a question, and then another question, and then a follow-up question. Or take the case of Eli, an elder in the temple. Surely Eli understood when God would be calling someone. But young Samuel, who was in the temple, came to Eli and said, "I heard you call." Eli said, "No." Later, young Samuel came. "I heard you call." Eli said, "No." It took 3 times before Eli allowed for the possibility that it was God who was calling Samuel. Or Elijah, who had demonstrated miraculous powers. He was able to accomplish extraordinary healings, miracles. But then when his enemies came after him, then he began to realize ministry is not all about miracle and power. Ministry is sometimes the terror of being confronted by an enemy who, when you tell the truth of God, they say you are wrong. And Elijah ran away. And he ran away from God, and he ran away from God's call, and he ran away from God's truth, and he hid in a cave, and God came looking for him. First with an earthquake, and Elijah said, "Oh, no, that's not God." And then with fire, and Elijah said, "Oh, no, that's not God." And then finally, God went silent. And Elijah, in the sound of silence, heard the voice of God. Or there was Jeremiah, who thought that God might be calling him, but he said, "I'm too young." God doesn't call young people, Jeremiah said. Or there was Mary. She sensed the presence of an angel, telling her that she would become the Son of God. But the whole idea dumbfounded her, and Mary said, "How can this be? How can this be?"